Hi, care pioneers, and I call caregivers pioneers because we really are pioneering every day. I wanted to do a deeper dive this week of something we've already talked about, and I wanted to introduce you to the latest research and knowledge about Alzheimer's disease and dementia with a little deeper dive. Now, I can't go into everything in this video because it would be very lengthy, but I will go into it in more depth and I'll be more sciency than usual, but I'm breaking it down in a way that you can understand. So, those in my private Facebook group, it's the family caregiver community, will get a list of resources that I've curated to supplement this video and give you more resources that you need. And I want to say that this is cutting edge science. So always check with your doctor before you start anything, but it is cutting edge science, and some in the established medical community still think it shouldn't be made public yet because they believe that there aren't enough studies done. I believe that there are some studies done that are promising, and that's why I'm bringing it to you. And because most of it is lifestyle changes, there's really no big downside or side effects. So why not start the lifestyle changes? But there is some evidence, actually, there's a lot of promising evidence. There's been three studies done, at least three studies done. And right now they're in the process of doing a double-blinded clinical trial, which is what modern medicine wants, in 6 locations in the United States. This is being done by Dr. Dale Bredesen, who is an internationally renowned neurologist. So this is not woo-woo science, and it is evidence-based. And that's why I wanted to bring it to you. As you know, I'm Susan Lieberman. I'm a holistic master life coach, a certified in that certified family um, caregiver or a family caregiver advocate and certified grief counselor. And I merge the Eastern wisdom with the Western science and body, mind, and spirit. But I am very science and evidence based because that's my background. That's who I am. So I wanted to recap for you what we talked about in part 1 of the last video on Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We talked about that Dr. Bredesen and others have said it is possible to prevent or possibly reverse or improve Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, especially in the earlier stages. So it's not, okay, you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, there's nothing you can do. Maybe there's a pill that can maybe slow the progression, but really not much. And there's nothing to do until eventually you die. So that's not really true anymore, especially for younger people, especially in the earlier stages, and especially if you're still asymptomatic. And what we talked about was that the symptoms may occur in the 60s, 70s, and your 80s for Alzheimer's disease and dementia, but the biological changes start at least 20 years before you are exhibiting any symptoms. So if you are exhibiting symptoms at 58, that means that the biochemical changes started at 38, which you can possibly reverse so you don't have to get the disease. But there are multiple factors. And it's not just a one size fits all pill, which probably science and medicine is not going to find because there's multiple factors. And that's why it's what I call and what science calls a multimodal approach, or um, many various different things. And it's precision medicine, taking a look at you and what your specific factors are and what your specific lifestyle is, and then coming up with a plan. So you might say at this point, Susan, why should I care about this? Number one, maybe someone in your family has had it, maybe someone you know. And as women, you're you're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease. 60% or 65% of Alzheimer's disease is in women, especially with increased stress and especially for caregivers. It's someplace between the third and the fifth leading cause of death in the US. In the UK, it's about number two. So it's a big thing. And like I said, the symptoms start in your 40s, could even start in your 40s and 50s, but the biological changes start much sooner than that. And 1 in 9 seniors age 65 and older has Alzheimer's disease. That's in the United States alone, that's 7 million Americans, and it's estimated to go up to about 14 or a little less than 14 by 2060. So but there is good news. And that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm so passionate about this. And I hope you listen to this. I hope, even though it's sciencey, I am breaking it down for you. And I'm breaking it down in the simplest way possible. By the way, there is a genetic component. For some people, that's only about 2 to 5% of the population as we know it. And even if it has a genetic component, there's still non-genetic components and causes. So not all hope is lost. And then for most of us, there are non-genetic causes. Dr. Dale Bredesen has identified so far 36 factors. And again, that's why it's so important to start prevention when you're younger. He recommends at 35, as young as 35 years old. So share this with everyone you know, because this does not have to be a widespread disease anymore. When we talk about Alzheimer's and dementia, what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is pathology identified in the brain, and it has entangled plaques in the brain, and then the brain starts to shrink. And so Alzheimer's is really a form of dementia, right? And so dementia is, when we talk about dementia, it's a cognitive, like a generalized cognitive decline, memory loss, difficulty learning new things, et cetera, et cetera. And the most common cause is Alzheimer's disease. So please pay attention. There's four main stages of Alzheimer's diseases. There's asymptomatic, so you have no symptoms, but the biological changes are still occurring, right? So it's important to get to know what to do and how to identify it. We'll talk about that. There's subjective, second is subjective cognitive decline, or SCI, and that can start in your 40s and 50s, where your memory's not so good anymore, and you might have trouble with learning new devices, electronic devices, new mobile phones, etc. But you can work and drive and you're still okay. Then there's mild, the third, mild cognitive impairment, MCI, where you're starting to know there's something wrong, but you can still work and drive, maybe not concentrate as well. And the fourth is when you've got Alzheimer's disease with dementia. And that's already you're having trouble with activities of daily living, forgetting how to bathe, forgetting how to dress, forgetting, you're in the car and at a stop sign and forgetting where you are. Maybe you can't drive anymore. You can't manage finances. You're forgetting how to bathe and dress, all those things. And then it just progresses from there. So again, I don't want this to be all doom and gloom, because there's a lot of things that you can do. And Dr. Dale Bredesen has identified 3 big drivers. Number 1, energetics, which is reduced blood flow, inflammation, like leaky gut, metabolic syndrome, like your thyroid issues, infection. It could be Lyme, it could be tick-borne diseases, it could be infections that you don't even realize you have in your body. And the third is toxicity, because we're exposed to so many toxins in our society today, and there's a lot of consequences to it. And so example is even microplastics. We all have these microplastics in us. So we may be exposed mercury, we may be exposed to a lot of these things. So now, what can you do about it? What are some of the practical strategies? Well, I keep on saying start early, start early, start early, at least at 35 or older. I always say go to your doctor because there's many reasons that you could be forgetful or be seeing signs and symptoms that you think are dementia related. So, don't get upset yet. So go to your doctor and have a good physical. That's the start early. Now, Dr. Bredesen also talks about testing cognoscopy. It sounds terrible, like a colonoscopy. So I wish he didn't say that because it has terrible connotations. It's not that terrible, but you can see it at www.mycognoscopy.com. And it has, here's the major components of it. Number one, there are some simple blood tests that you can take to see if you have a genetic component, and they're about 90% accurate. Although they're available in this country, they are not FDA approved yet, or some of them are not FDA approved yet. They're probably not covered by insurance, so they could be expensive. And there are other consequences that I just want you to know about, such as eligibility for insurance or life insurance or whatever. So there's things to consider, and you don't have to have them to be able to do all the other things that actually you can control. But one of them is the APOE4 gene, APO4 gene, or APOE gene. And do you have it? Because if you have it, you're more likely to get Alzheimer's disease later on. And there's the p-tau 217, which combined with two other factors that they can give, as well as others. But I wanted you to know about that. The other testing is cognitive testing, and you can get it online at, mycognoscopy.com. And it's just a cognitive evaluation or assessment that you can do online if you want to. And he also talks about if you're having, real symptoms, you may want to get an MRI with volumetrics to see how much your brain is or isn't shrinking. The third thing he talks about is checking for toxins, right? Do you have mercury poisoning? Do you have all of those other things? And are you missing any, vitamins that you need? So here's the main factors, regardless of whether you have these tests, and I'm not advocating them, I'm just letting you know. These are the main factors that we can control, and one is sleep. So any questions you have about sleep, again, check your doctor. I am not a doctor. I am a nurse. I may have forgotten to mention that in the beginning. I am a nurse. But you should be checking in with your doctor to see if if you suspect sleep apnea. One way that you can check is to check your own oxygen saturation, or how much oxygen is being carried in your blood. And there are things that you can do at home, such as the Aura ring. That's OURA ring. Maybe smart watches, such as the Apple and Fitbit, although they might not be so accurate. You want to get quality of sleep, at least 7 hours a night, and that varies because we all have our own internal body clocks. But you want about 1.5 hours of REM sleep and 1 hour of deep sleep. So, and if you have sleep apnea, it is so important to address it. There are things that you can do. There are sleep apnea machines that they're not as bad as they used to be. My husband wears it, and oh my gosh, I'm, this is a huge for prevention of Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. But there are also other things that you can do, things that you can wear in your mouth to keep your jaw, in the proper position. There's so many things you can do. Please go to the doctor about that. Another factor you can control is test for leaky gut. Another is change in your oral microbiome. Again, infections. Do you have Lyme or other tick-borne infections? It's so important to check for that. But one of the huge ones is diet and nutrition. Again, I'm not a registered dietitian. or a nutritionist, although I am a health and life coach. So always check with your doctor first before you go on any specific diet, please, please. And that is a caveat, and that's a disclaimer that I'm saying. But what's been found to be very useful is the Mediterranean diet with combined with a keto flex diet. Now, I have, for those of you in my Facebook group, I have resources for you on this Mediterranean diet combined with the Keto Flex diet. But basically, it's about 5 to 10% carbs, and there's good carbs such as the whole grains, fruits, vegetables, legumes, the starchy vegetables, and there are bad carbs such as highly processed foods and cheeses, cookies, breads, those sugars. So look at what you're doing with sugars, and we all know that. Um, then another part of it is 60 to 65% fats, but the good fats, not the, and by the way, non-fat or low fat is not necessarily good for you, because when it's non-fat and low fat, they're adding in other chemicals that may be harmful for you. I don't want to get into the polyunsaturated fats and all of that. That's just way beyond this. The other thing is about 30% protein. And also, are you missing any vitamins? And maybe you do need supplements. Don't know. But when we're talking about proteins, there's a very important protein for the brain. It's called BD. N is in Nancy, F is in Frank. So bad, D dog, N Nancy, F Frank, BDNF. And it's brain derived neurotrophic factor. So it's a protein that's found in the brain and the spinal cord, and it plays a key role in the development and maintenance of normal brain function. So how do you get BDNF? Like just naturally? Hey, exercise, exercise. Maybe doing those jumping jacks, do 10 jumping jacks. Maybe high intensity exercise where you do a spurt and then stop and a spurt and stop. Sleep. We've already talked about sleep. Social activities. Get out there and socialize. That increases the BDNF. Don't say I'm a caregiver and I don't have time to go out or see anybody. It's so important for your health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Stress, and I talk about that a lot, and the emotions and how to deal with all of those mixed emotions. So the stress management, you're not going to ever get rid of all the stress because then we wouldn't be alive, but there's so much you can do. Avoid processed foods and sugars, and cognitive stimulation. Keep learning something new, a new language, listening to this, anything to stimulate that mind. So, in conclusion, because I know this has been long and more sciencey, and I've given you a lot of information, and I will continue to always try to bring you info that's has evidence-based science behind it, even if it's cutting edge. And in this case, the things that we can control, there's really no downside to it. And so that's why I'm bringing you what I call curated information. And also, I guide you through caregiving. And also, in this regard, the questions to ask the medical community, but caregiving in all of its facets. And if you're not already in my private Facebook group, the Family Caregiver Community, I suggest you join because you'll get more of this mind, body, and spirit science, spirit, connecting mind and body. And also, you'll get the resources that I've curated and put together for my community that will be posted there for possibly preventing and reversing or improving Alzheimer's disease and dementia-related diseases. So join the family caregiver community. There's really no downside to doing that other than you don't have to go it alone anymore. So care pioneers, until next time, see you later.